Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted, episode 313, the Friday edition where we talk about all the stories that we haven't covered yet, or recover stories that we want to cover. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. Today's August 4th, 2017.
Okay, there's something that we always forget to tell you at the beginning of the show, and that's to give to Anglican Unscripted, Anglican TV, and Anglican Inc. If you want to go to Anglican Inc., anglican.inc/donate, you could donate to our show there. It helps us with travel expenses and little miscellaneous things that happen throughout the year. We also want you to help spread the word about Anglican Unscripted. If you could click the share button on Facebook every time you see a new episode and share it with your friends and if you're a priest, obviously with your congregation. If you're the congregation, share it with your priest. He may not know about it. And third, we want you to subscribe to us on YouTube. If you go to our YouTube page, the link is in the show notes here. The show notes are on YouTube. That doesn't make sense. If you go to YouTube, if you click subscribe, you'll get an instant notification every time there's a new episode posted. Okay, welcome to another show. It's Friday. It's when George and I sit down on Friday. It's really called Casual Friday. I noticed you got a nice jacket on today. You were kind of dressed up. You know, normally we do this in all black, but...
No, this is casual, Kevin. I have a tan suit on. That's a casual outfit for a clergyman.
I have my standard black polo. Looking good.
And I have a handkerchief showing, too, so that does show I'm being a little sporty today.
I didn't even shave. I thought we were doing casual. Whatever. Obviously, some changes in your life. Your daughter is finally back from her internship in Hawaii, so how's that going?
Great. She's home. She's going to be unconscious for 2 to 3 weeks before she heads up to her final year at Emory University. Mm-hmm. Our other daughter, we moved her into her new little house before the start of her final year at the University of Florida. It's exciting time, expensive times.
Yes.
My daughter in student housing. These houses that are rented to people who live in university towns are horrendously expensive. It's like living in Manhattan. It's a shack that costs more than, if you add all the roommates together, it costs more than our house does in Country Club Acres or whatever. And I had to rewire the dryer to install it, and I burned myself with soldering irons, all the stuff that George loves to do, playing with fire.
Yes. Jeez. Well, my daughter, we want to have her move out to an apartment. She's going to be in her last year of college, but we live 4 miles from her college, so we can't really, economically, justify it. We also live 4 miles from New Haven, Yale, so all the prices for little small apartments here are absolutely through the roof. Like you said, Manhattan prices. And so Michaela will be living with us for a while. Even though she's got a full-time job, fully employed, we're having mercy upon her. My other daughter moved to Pittsburgh, where rents are relatively cheap. And as you probably heard, my son Benjamin finally got up at 11:37 this morning because his school doesn't start till September.
Have you thought about him entering the ministry? Because, that's a good day. Get up about 11:30 on Friday, play some golf, and because he only works on Sundays in the priesthood.
Well, he's 17 now, so he's entered the Pharisee stage of his religious life, and he'll make a good priest one day because he's getting the Pharisee stage out early. On to the news. I guess we need to cover a couple of different topics. We'll cover the upcoming primates meeting. We'll cover a little bit what happened in South Carolina, but most of that was covered in episode 312. And George and I get to talk about our favorite bishop from the other side, Bishop Bruno. Let's start with Bishop Bruno. From what I've read in the press and from Michael Curry, he's now under super secret Animal House probation and not allowed to have any authority over St. James, Newport Beach. My question is, does he really have that type of authority, George?
Yes. Michael Curry issued the hearing panel in the case issued its final order.
Mhm.
and that was 3 year suspension and no oversight of St. James Newport Beach. And the congregation can go back into its building. Now, Bishop Bruno has 40 days to respond to that final order, and then during the appeals process, it does not take effect. The congregation wrote to the presiding bishop in the hearing panel saying, look, Bishop Bruno can still sell the property. He can still take his revenge on the congregation. He can still persecute the priest, all under his protection in the appeals process. So the presiding bishop did the right thing. He issued an extraordinary order to foster peace and reconciliation. Those are the buzzwords that gives him that authority.
Hold
Peace and
on.
reconciliation.
I need to write this down. Michael Curry did the right thing. Yeah, keep going.
Peace and reconciliation. And so he issued an order saying, to foster peace and reconciliation, and am stripping you of all oversight of St. James the Great Newport Beach, giving it to your coadjutor, John Taylor, excuse me.
Tom, yeah.
James Taylor is
You're thinking No, it's a different guy. Yeah.
John Taylor. And all oversight over the priest, Cindy Evans Voorhees. This is an extraordinary slap in the face to John Bruno from the presiding bishop. It's saying, we don't trust you to do the right thing. We think you are a venal, revengeful man who will try to take out your anger on the congregation and its priest. And while you appeal this, we don't trust you an inch. This is an extraordinarily
It's extraordinary.
harsh.
First of all, people under his authority said, wait a minute, there's a 40-day appeal process. We are still in danger. St. James said he can, certainly get rid of our priest.
40
he can
days
sell
to
the
file an
property.
appeal.
To file
And
an
then
appeal.
the appeal.
Yeah, I
And the
mean,
appeals could run for years.
yeah.
So
The fear was real. Whatever mafia, Goodfellas type things may or may not be going on here, I think St. James the Great and Michael Curry did the right thing and brought up the issue. Yeah.
But there is sort of a Goodfellas. Michael Curry is sort of acting like Rudy Giuliani, because John Bruno may be the capo di tutti capo of all this,
That's correct,
but there are a
yeah.
lot of unindicted co-conspirators. The Standing Committee of the Diocese of Los Angeles facilitated his bad acts. And Curry is essentially saying, I'm going to give you people on the Standing Committee an opportunity to turn state's evidence and show that you are filled with sweetness and light and goodness, and I will not chop your heads off.
No, it's true. I think if you want to look at this as a mafia organization, Bruno being the godfather, and the organization, the hitmen, so to speak, was the Standing Committee. They were the yes men. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll take out Guido for you. Mm-hmm.
They're being given a chance to turn state's evidence, and they're not going to be entering the witness protection program, but they're going to be left alone right now.
So who's in charge of St. James right now?
The bishop coadjutor, the Bishop Taylor, James or John, I forget which. Bishop Taylor. And they basically, I think, can move as soon as they get the locks off the doors and the church furnishings stuck back in. I think they'll be in any day.
Good.
And they return to their standing as a vicar, as a parish of the diocese. And see, one of the things people say, oh well, with all these years, how can this place survive? They need to sell it anyway. Here's the thing. This was a parish under a dynamic priest that actually rose from the ashes, was going to be self-supporting until Bishop Brewer kicked it out. So this is not an extended charity case. This is not a Pyrrhic victory. This is a church that will be used by the people, and I have every confidence it'll be successful in the years to come.
Yeah, we say Michael Curry did the right thing. If he truly wanted to do the right thing, he would put the original St. James congregation back in, but that's over the hill with legal lawsuits, and it's decided by the courts of California. Interesting, it's going to be fun to follow, because the right thing, in my humble opinion, for Bishop Bruno to do right now would be to step down, to resign and just step away from his ministry and collect that wonderful pension you get as a bishop in the Episcopal Church.
Well, Kevin, it would be really, I believe, and this is total speculation on my part, how has Bishop Bruno been funding his legal battles with the National Church? If I was called up before a church court, I would have to go out and hire an attorney to defend myself. And I don't have the money to do that. That's why most church cases are settled quickly because, or with a plea bargain or a guilty plea, because people don't have the tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars it takes to litigate a lawsuit. Bishop Bruno sits on the corporation soul. Has he been paying his personal legal bills out of the diocese money? If so, that's an improper use of its money, and he may have to reimburse it. So he's got to hang on as long as possible. If he leaves right now and gets a golden handshake, goes away, and they do the audit of the corporate soul, they're going to ask him to reimburse them money that was spent on his personal legal.
Well, in many respects, a lot of that would be illegal as well, and he could be brought up on charges outside of the church. Interesting to check that out.
So it's in his interest to keep. It's in his interest to keep the ball rolling as long as possible, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. But if you resign today, you know what's going to happen. So if I were Bishop Bruno, I'd hang on as long as possible, simply because what may lie under the rocks with the corporation. So.
Okay, on to our next topic. We're going to talk about the primates meetings. Basically, we have two save the dates out there. One for Lambeth 2020, one for the upcoming primates meeting in October. That's probably more official. The invites have been sent out. We don't know who's going or not going, except for one. There was a interview by the BBC. They talked to Archbishop Stanley Ntagali of Uganda. They asked him, hey, there's a meeting coming up. You're here on the plane with Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. Would you be interested in going to the primates meeting? Now, George and I have told you this before, that Stanley really can't go because the House of Bishops in Uganda passed a resolution saying we won't go as long as there's heretics, I think they mentioned the Episcopal Church once, who side with the same-sex agenda within the church. And so Stanley said, well, I can't go. George, that's not just the first person who's not going to go, though.
Well, I don't know. GAFCON has changed. There have always, in my experience of the African church, there have always been great men who have sort of led the charge. In the 1988 Lambeth Conference, there was a fellow named Desmond Tutu. And Desmond Tutu may be cuckoo on a great many issues, but he was followed. He set the tone and the lead. And at the 98, it was David Guattari.
That's correct.
Archbishop of Kenya. 2008, Peter Akinola. And the GAFCON was led, and the Peter Akinola had a force of character, had a force of personality and magnetism that the other primates would walk with him without too much conflict. We've now reached a point where the GAFCON primates are fragmented. We have Tanzania and Kenya, one new and one fellow about to go out the door, both of whom it's in their more parochial interest to go to the primates meeting than it is to stay away. The Archbishop of Kenya is a weak archbishop vis-a-vis his House of Bishops. The Archbishop of Tanzania is at war with his House of Bishops, so he needs...
And with the previous Archbishop.
Yes, and he needs the imprimatur of Lambeth to uphold his authority. Congo is new. Sudan is new. South Sudan, Daniel Deng retires in October, and so there'll be a new fellow, and that new fellow, I don't know if Daniel Deng will be going or not, because he retires in October. I don't know the exact date.
Yeah, I would say yes, just because...
Anis is retired as primate. He's been replaced by the Archbishop of Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. You can go through all that, but what's happened? the problem in the Anglican GAFCON level is rotation is castration. You have these guys, they come new into the GAFCON primates, and they say, okay, we need to give the Archbishop of Canterbury the benefit of the doubt. And so when the old hands, people like Drexel Gomez or Munir Nice, say, we've been doing this for 10, 15 years, it's not going to work, they say, well, let's try it again. Munir Nice, Drexel Gomez, Peter Akinola retire, new people come on board, and it takes them a few times before they figure out that Lucy is going to pull the ball away from Charlie Brown, and they're going to get fooled. So we're going to have the same. I don't want to be bad-mouthing anybody, but some of these fellas haven't been burned enough to be careful, to be wary.
Well, they were all burned at the last Primates gathering, which was held last January in Canterbury. They all showed up. They had a wonderful time going to the Canterbury Cathedral, praying in each room. They were allowed to wander and have a day to themselves there. And I've talked to these Primates, it was a wonderful start. And we had all the promises and guarantees we want on how to deal with the Episcopal Church, who, as far as most of these primates are concerned, is completely apostate. We got the Archbishop of Canterbury with Bishop Munir to agree to hold them to a place where they have no vote, no voice in the Anglican Communion for a period of 3 years. We don't think we could have got anything any better except to have them kicked out, but we're going to honor Justin here and let him carry out our agenda for the Episcopal Church. And guess what? It didn't take but the press conference after the primates meeting for Justin to undo everything he said he would do. And even so now they know what can happen at a primates gathering / meeting, George.
And the BBC in their interview with Stanley Ntagali earlier this week, Justin Welby is visiting Uganda, trying to sort of shore up support there, and Stanley gave an interview to the BBC saying he's not going to go. The BBC in their story had a little quote from the Lambeth Primates meeting press conference where Justin Welby was quoted as saying that the Anglican Communion is against is trying to stop the persecution of gay people and its supporters in its own ranks. So what did the BBC say about the last primates meeting that you just described, 3-year suspension, this and that? What Welby turned it into is, let's criticize the Africans for not having an English or an American sensibility on lesbian and gay rights. You don't think I don't mean to be cynical, but there's
you're doing the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's the question of the ACNA. The ACNA, the primates, GAFCON in the past have said, we're not going if you're not going to bring the ACNA. The ACNA was not included in the initial save the date for Lambeth Conference, save the date for the primates meeting. There's no plans to bring Foley Beach there officially. Yet GAFCON primates are still going to go. Now, does that mean that they're going to smuggle him in along with potato chips and coffee into the meeting? Pops Foley Beach from the bag? We don't know.
Don't know.
But there's seems a little bit of confusion right now as to where people stand.
All right, let's move on to our last topic. Every Anglican on the face of the earth, thanks to Anglican Inc. and Anglican Unscripted, should know that South Carolina had a bad decision and a bad result from the Supreme Court there. It was a split decision, but as far as I'm concerned, it's the worst split decision in the history of the earth. But that's my own prejudice. The Diocese of South Carolina, under Bishop Mark Lawrence, gets to keep the trademark and seal of the bishop. Yay! However, they only get to keep 7 of their churches and additional property that they own, but they lose 28 or 29 churches to the Episcopal Church. And if you want to watch a more in-depth legal discussion I had with Alan Haley, that's episode 312. It'll be in the show notes. But that was the first day. there's been some reaction, some behind the scenes, what do we do now? There's been a lot of shock on Facebook. There's a lot of people who are having PSTD, a lot of deer in the headlights looks. How did we lose such a case where the law was clearly on their side, precedent was clearly on their side, the courts coming up to this point were clear on the side. Alan Haley says it was a bad judge, a really bad judge. What's the update as of today, George?
Well, I've talked to leaders of the diocese. I've talked to some other people. They're going to have a meeting. Mark Lawrence is meeting with the clergy next week to discuss things. Today, August 4th, Foley Beach is set aside as a day of prayer for the church in South Carolina. And the South Carolina leaders were completely shocked by this outcome. They were not prepared. So they didn't have a statement all ready to trot out and say, this is what we're going to do. The Alan Haley's review of the opinion and of the hearing has led him to conclude that there's a corrupt judge involved. One of the judges who was vociferous in her support for the Episcopal Church was one of the founders of the Episcopal Forum, which was the group that brought charges against Mark Lawrence. Her husband was a delegate to the convention that elected Charles von Rosenberg to be the bishop of the Episcopal Church in South Carolina. So she is a partisan, an open partisan for the Episcopal Church. And Alan goes into great detail and you can read his arguments on Anglican Inc. and watch the episode that Kevin mentioned. Okay, now what? What happens now? This is a political problem. It's not a legal problem. On a legal front, the diocese can go back and ask for a rehearing and point out the improper conduct of the judge. Judges in South Carolina, the Supreme Court are appointed by the state legislature. And this is a problem that needs to be fought out in the state legislature. Now, that's not going to resolve anything in the short term. Is there going to be a settlement from the Episcopal Church? I don't think so. Why? Well, Michael Curry, though he has done the right thing in many instances, is not strong enough to do the right thing in this case because the Episcopal machine has been fighting this battle for years, and he doesn't have the power within the church to change course. He can slow things down, he can speed things up, but he can't change course very easily. And actually the decision maker is Bishop Skip Adams, now, who is the bishop in South Carolina. Now, for those who know Episcopal recent history, Skip Adams is a Charles Manson type bishop. It's one of the worst bishops in the Episcopal Church. He had been bishop of Central New York, and he was noted for having brought on charges one of his clergy, and he lost that battle in an ecclesiastical court in his own diocese, who basically found that his staff and he colluded to basically defame this man, if I remember correctly.
No,
Whatever it is, Skip Adams is a real piece of work.
Yes.
Skip Adams is the one that refused to sell Matt Kennedy his congregation and sold it for half the price to a Muslim congregation. So if you want somebody to take the venal low road, you hire Skip Adams. So I don't see there being much talk. Maybe Skip Adams has changed. Maybe he has now in a position to do good things. I don't see much compromise coming out of that. So
we read Skip Adams' response, and he was not prepared to win either. We're going to have to look at this, and we'll get back to you. Was basically his response.
Now, but here's the thing: my words just now show how difficult it is to reach them because I'm an Episcopalian, I remain so, and I view Skip Adams with suspicion. How much more will the ACNA people view Skip Adams? And how will Skip Adams view the ACNA people? There's so many hard feelings here that I think Foley Beach's answer really is the right one. We need to consecrate this issue to God and ask him to solve it. This will go back before the courts. Lawyers are going to make more money. It's going to be a few more years. Nobody's going to get kicked out of their church this Sunday. But it's just a mess.
It is a mess, and as Alan Haley said, this is why the New Testament says you don't go to courts thanks to the Apostle Paul, because there's never a true answer. Our truth is in Christ, and our answer is in Christ. And
we have parishioners in my Episcopal church who've moved down from South Carolina and who were members of the Episcopal diocese and the now Anglican diocese, and they agreed not to talk about that issue because brother was set against brother. This is a real nasty divorce that took place in South Carolina. It wasn't a clean divorce. It wasn't an easy one. The degree of animosity and hatred, it's so large that a judge is basically made the decision to cast aside all prudence and good common behavior and law and morality and go for a verdict rather than rule on the judge on the issues of the law and the facts. It's that bad.
However, George and I will keep you in our prayers, and we ask that everybody in viewing range of Anglican Unscripted pray for the diocese, pray for Bishop Mark Lawrence, pray for Archbishop Foley Beach. Keep these people in your prayer, because there's going to be some more decisions that need to be made, and we want to do it with wisdom and righteousness. Okay, we've gone long, George. We're up to 25 minutes. Oh, I feel so bad for our viewers. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger, and you have been watching episode 313 of Anglican Unscripted.